Those of you with us and those of you joining later on YouTube, I'd like to say welcome to our first Spilling the Tea of the semester. Welcome, welcome. But first, I would like to start with a moment of stillness so we can gather our thoughts, get on the same page. Okay, so if you are not already, I'd like to take this time to say follow the Center for Global and Career Education's Facebook page and Instagram. You'll be able to keep up to date with all the crazy and wonderful events coming to a screen near you. And with that being said, we'll get into it. We have Lirit Olyan here, class of 2013. Welcome, Lirit.
Thank you.
Thank you. So a little bit about Lirit. Lirit Olyan is a New York-based costume and character designer. They specialize in costume fabrication, armor, special effects, and sculptural garments for stage and film. They earned their undergraduate degree in biology from Earlham College in 2013 and went on to graduate from the University of Texas at Austin with an MFA in costume design. Lirit has since worked as a professor of costume design at James Madison University, a garment technician at Kisisana Opera Resort, and a freelance garment technician for companies such as Imagination Inc. and their augmented reality exhibition at New York Comic Con. In their teaching career, Lirit emphasizes critical media analysis, technical artisanship, and ethical artistry. Welcome, Lirit. That's quite the bio. That is quite the bio. Welcome, welcome. We're so glad to have you.
So glad to be back at an Earlham event.
Yes, yes, yes. Did I say that right? Kisisana?
I think it's Quizisana, but when you actually work there, we just say Quizzy. So.
Okay. So another thing that jumped out to me when learning about you is the fact that you are a bio major and now you're a costume designer. Can you tell me about that transition?
Hi, I would love to, and thank you for giving me a chance right before we got started to practice answering that question. I was a double major in theater and biochem, and I was intending to focus on neuroscience. That was my neuroscience and anatomy. So all of those, the human based. I was really curious about how people work and from the inside out, I guess. And I came from a very, very scientific family. My brother's an engineer. My grandfather's a physics professor. My parents work in web development and coding. So I had come to college, I think, with that idea that a career in the arts wasn't going to be realistically feasible, and that the things that I wanted to know and the things I was curious about were going to come from a sciencey place. And I loved it. I still get comments that to this day make me cranky, where people are like, oh, you dropped out of a bio major. Were you not smart enough? Which is right. That's the face that I make too every time, because I still hear parents saying things like that to their students. And the thing is, my grades in my bio major were better than my grades in the arts, because arts are they're so subjective. It's really hard to achieve something like perfection in the arts because there is no such thing. But it turned out that I was really more interested in the storytelling, how humans do what they do, why humans do what they do, and motivation, and projecting that into the world, and learning it back. So the way I was interested in how people exist just turned out to be different than I thought it was in the first place. But there's more overlap than you think, weirdly enough.
Wow. So, can you tell me, in transitioning from that into the field of costume design and theater, what are the types of skills a person interested in costume design that may not be in the theater arts or focused in the theater arts right now? What are some of those skills that they would need to perfect or at least strengthen?
I think there's, in theater especially, but I think in most careers, there's a strong balance that you have to have between hard skills and soft skills. So hard skills would be for costume design, things like being able to render your ideas, to draw them clearly so that you can essentially communicate through your drawing, show people what you're thinking to make, and communicate in a visual fashion so that everybody stays on the same page. For example, being able to know about fabric and garments and how fabric works and what things are actually achievable, all those types of things. But when it comes down to the really necessary skills, to me, it's a lot about compassion. It's a lot about being interested in the people you're working with. Because as a costume designer, a lot of the time I'm standing on one side of a curtain essentially, and there's somebody on the other side of that curtain in a dressing room getting naked and then putting on the thing that I designed for their body. And then I'm about to go all up in their business, altering things and deciding how it's going to fit them, and all up in their personal space. And to do that well, and to do that in a collaborative way, I have to be someone who's interested in collaborating with them, understanding what their needs are, understanding what their performance is going to be, as opposed to an artiste. And I'm just interested in seeing my designs on their body. So to me, that collaborative sort of soft skill is a lot more important than any individual hard skill, because you're just going to be in people's space. You're going to be up in their business, and it's really important to sort of think of that first in a lot of ways.
Right, right. Um, so what kind of resources at Earlham would you have, if doing this over again, would you have taken more advantage of in getting those skills?
Oh, that's a great question. Ooh, that's such I'm sorry, that's such a good question. Actually, I got a lot of what I wanted out of Earlham, and a lot of that was not related to what I ended up doing. Learning, for example, I took public speaking classes. I have horrifying, all my life, came out of the womb with horrifying social anxiety. When I first came to college, I could not speak in front of people. I could speak like this, I could kind of do this, but I could not speak to save my life. Um, and so things like public speaking classes, acting. I don't act. I'm not an actor. All of the different classes that I took that forced me to consider things in different perspectives. I took linguistics. I took Greek. Um, Taking those variety of classes that kind of come with that liberal arts experience allows me to work with a lot more information more broadly. And that's what I would hope to see my students do as well, is kind of take advantage of everything, honestly. Really.
A
And
lot
there
of
are people there trying to help you, who want to help you, whose jobs are to help you, and take advantage of them.
Right. There are a lot of awesome resources at Earlham, especially as a liberal arts institution. So I'm glad you said that. Um, so getting back on script, I'm sorry, I know I threw you for a loop. But what are some exciting things that are coming up for you, and what are some exciting things happening in the field of costume design right
Oh, okay, so two separate questions. For me personally, I might have a textbook published,
now?
which would be so I would be so excited. I would be garment fabrication, so things that aren't fabric, but thermoplastics, armor, leatherworking, prosthetics, things that are more sculptural is kind of my area of stuff that I like to build. And my first outline has been accepted by a publisher, so now I'm doing edits, and we'll see. And it'll probably be a long time coming, but in theory, I might be publishing a textbook, and I would be so delighted.
Congratulations.
I would be so excited. Thank you. Um, Costume design as a whole, I mean, we're in a weird moment in history right now. Obviously, we're in a very, very strange, very uncertain moment in our lives for everyone. And costume design has come to a really interesting place when I look at the networking groups, professional conversations, conference conversations. Cultural appropriation is the big ticket conversation that's happening right now, and I think that it should be. There are certain ways that things have been done for years and years, or even decades, and this idea that storytellers have the right to access any culture on kind of any terms that they choose. And what if no? What if maybe? What if there are ways to approach that better? Um, and what if there are experts, and certainly cultural experts, what if there are people we could be hiring that can give us better access to tell those stories ethically, casting ethically, casting consciously? All of those conversations are very, very alive right now, and I'm excited to see where they take us, because right now they're just floating in the stratosphere. But as those conclusions come forward and policy changes start to happen, I'm excited to see where that takes us.
Right. Yes. So, do you have any tips for students who are starting to put together their own creative, be it costume or other art forms, their portfolios?
Like half of my job, my favorite part of my job, because I love seeing what people have done. Yes. So these are things that it took me a long time to learn, which is why I remember them, because I'm a little bit of a maximalist, and you don't need to be a maximalist in your portfolio. So the first thing that I always try to tell people is one really good photo or representation of your work is better than a billion bad ones, or 50 mediocre ones. One really good one. So regardless of what sort of artistic area you're in, you might want to think about, learning lighting. Golden hour in the morning and at night is really important. Getting good angles on your sculpture pieces, having really beautiful shots of your work that look like they're professional portfolio shots, which you can do with your phone and a lamp, or a window. You don't have to have a huge complex setup, but there's a big difference between a deliberate sculptured portfolio shot versus sort of something in the workroom, or something that looks like you turned it in for a project, or a picture of your painting where your thumb's in the picture because you're holding it up, or something like that. Like those types of things will just kind of set that bar at, I am professional and I'm going to deliver professional quality products, and you're showing that through the way you present your work. Simple is better than complicated. You're trying to send a simple message about who you are as an artist and what you can offer your clients. And then let's see, what else do I like? So I have kind of a weird niche. I live in this place that's a little bit horror, a little bit fantasy, a little bit glamour, and then sometimes some completely other things. But I also make sure that my portfolio has some kind of basic things. I can make a big, crazy nightmare armor character, but I can also make like a leather purse, right? You want to sort of show your versatility and that thing that is uniquely you at the same time, to give that breadth, but really show people who they're getting from you, not who you think they want to see, but who you actually are as an artist, because that's going to bring the right clients to you.
I was reading something recently where an opinion piece about the fact that one of the invaluable resources that you have in college is the ability to network out. So right now, students have photographers as their friends. So
Yeah.
would you kind of encourage using those friends and that network of creatives that they have kind of at their fingertips or right across the heart?
Absolutely, always. The school that I was teaching at the last couple of years, there were a couple students who were really interested in photography in the theater department, and they end up taking a lot of headshots. So they're building their portfolio materials, right? Because that's a marketable skill. But also actors are getting portfolio shots. But also it's always kind of a very symbiotic relationship that's really wonderful. Always take advantage of the people who are in your life, in your creative space, always, and give something back. Obviously, don't just take advantage. I think I lost audio on you. I'm so sorry.
Here we go. Okay.
Yes.
So, what types of experiences helped you gain more skills in costume design? I know you kind of touched on that already, but can you tell me the best ones that you would say you need to take this course, you need to take this course?
In terms of courses, I mean, I think anybody in an artistic medium of any kind, you want to be taking things like public speaking, even if you never want to do it. I never want to do it. I've never wanted to do it in my life. But then I end up teaching. So now I'm in a position where I have to speak all the time. Public speaking, business classes. If you're in the arts, to be honest, being able to manage yourself as a business professional, whether you start an LLC or you're freelancing or what you do, being able to negotiate a contract, read a contract and tell if it's healthy for you. All of those types of things, marketing and advertising. To people who want to be an artist, it can kind of feel soul killing to do that stuff. But what it actually is you learning to defend yourself. You're learning the rules of the world that you're going to engage with and being able to basically take care of yourself as a business person. So do that, as well as the classics and taking your art classes, business, marketing, advertising, how to make yourself what you want to be.
That's great. So a follow-up to that, I'm shooting myself in the foot because I get excited about what you say and then
Good.
out of order. But starting off as a freelancer, as someone who does freelance work, can you talk to us a little bit about that? How do you go about that? Like, it's a scary thing.
It really is.
Starting points, not the whole thing, but your starting.
So find connections to things. You might not immediately have someone who wants to pay you to make a costume or wants to pay you to do the thing that your end goal is. I moved to Seattle briefly right after I graduated, and I ended up doing like window displays. People would pay me actually a solid amount of money for boutique displays designed for their sort of advertising and stuff like that, setting up this whole thing. I made a giant pair of angel wings for a Christmas display, for a jewelry store, things like that, right? But what that does, you gain practice building things or whatever it is that you want to do. You gain practice working with people and figuring out what a client wants and how to create that for them. And you just gain practice kind of thinking of yourself as an entity that needs to make money. Unfortunately, as much we live in that system, right? So an entity that needs to take care of yourself in the system that we live in. So don't necessarily hold out for that perfect thing, which isn't the same thing as selling yourself short. So I went from doing mostly boutique work to doing usually costume work for theme events and things like that. I ended up making a lot of corsetry because Seattle's big on corsetry. So a lot of support garments and things like that. And you can sort of, as long as you know what your goal is longer term, you keep shooting in that direction, but don't be afraid of the zig and zag that's going to happen. That's the biggest part of it. It'll take time. Everything takes time.
So how did you go from boutiques to working for events? Because that seems like that's kind of where you kind of got pushed into your trajectory a lot more.
How did that happen? My memory. It was a lot of the same people. I actually, right out of college, I started working at a fabric store in Seattle. I found clients that way, people who were buying a ton of materials for something they didn't actually know how to make. And then they would hire me to create that thing because they needed someone to actually do that. And then from there, people who would come to those openings. If you're a friendly person, if you like to talk to people and chat with people, which I just do. And then people are running an event and, you just kind of wander into it, which doesn't mean that you're working without focus. You can wander and still know where you're trying to go. And I knew at that point that I wanted to do costume related stuff. But everybody has something that they need. And if you happen to be the person that can provide that, that's great. You just have to be interested in knowing enough about them to find that out in conversation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yes.
And then once you have the start of that portfolio, then you can start going to businesses and saying, this is what I offer. Do you need that? Once you have those little seeds.
Right. What kind of tips would you give students who are trying to kind of network into the industry and getting their foot in there?
Don't ever network like capital M network. Nobody likes that. Nobody on earth likes that. Nobody likes it being aimed at them, right? One of my friends, or not an acquaintance really, a friend of a friend, I think he was working on SNL the last time I talked to him. So like he's doing some pretty like, solid stuff, and he got to more the top of the food chain in the city he was living in, for his industry, right? And he would go to networking events for costumers, and he would just want to leave because everyone's coming up to him and wants something from him, or they're, you know, kissing his butt or whatever it is. And he would get so uncomfortable. I think we've all met that one person that comes over and like shakes your hand and hands you a business card and then walks away and shakes somebody else's hand and hands them a business card. You don't need to be that person. None of us really are that person naturally, I don't think. Um, I think it's about making friends. Don't try to network, because when you put on that front, everyone's going to feel that front. Mm-hmm. It's really just, you meet someone, you're curious about their life, or there's an artist whose work you admire. Why would you try to network with someone whose work you don't admire? So then you have something to say to them. I was really interested in this, and this you did, that you can offer them. And that person is going to want to talk to you versus the person that you're trying so hard to sell yourself to. So I think it's just finding that person that you are as much as you can, because like actual me, I love people and I make friends very easily. Networking me is just super awkward, let me tell you. So it's much more about being natural than you think. It's much more about
relationship building versus networking with a capital N.
Absolutely. And you know, my field is small. The academic, if I'm applying to a university job to teach somewhere, 3 of my friends are applying for that too, right? But the fact that we all have a friendship that's more than just networking means that it becomes not as competitive so much as, oh, you tried for that one? Oh, that's awesome. They talked to me about this. Did they, you know, and it becomes a much more healthy thing than if you're,
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No capital N.
So what's the biggest challenge that you've had to kind of tackle as a freelance technician?
Ooh, perfectionism. So my training, UT Austin is a very good school for costume design. It is an excellent school for costume technology. You get trained in sort of the very elevated techniques, detailed techniques, absolute perfection in creating something. There aren't that many people in the world who can afford to pay for that type of perfection, right? That's much more artisan, couturier, you know, high design type of things. So for me, a lot of times it's actually cutting back and making offers to people. Hey, you want this thing? I could do this thing for this much money because it's going to take me that much time, but maybe you actually want this thing that looks just as cool but isn't as perfect, you know, for this. So it's balancing what they want, what you can offer, being really aware of how long it takes you to create something, because you don't want to sell yourself short ever. Tacking on those extra couple of hours that it might take you just in case, because it's always better to tell someone it's going to cost less than you said originally than tell them it's going to cost more than you said originally. And just being honest, you want relationships with your clients too, because that's what's going to make them come back to you.
I think that's a very valuable piece of information for anybody who's selling something of their own to someone. So yeah, it's great. What made you go into teaching?
You know, I think some things we choose to be and some things we just are. And I think for me, teaching is just there. I love to learn things. I love to read. I love to kind of gather information, process information. My partner makes fun of me because I lecture in my sleep, apparently. So I'll just be there and I'll be sleeping and I'll be like, okay, because I love those connections. I love sharing what I found out. And I love seeing people, like there's these great click moments where something makes sense all of a sudden that didn't make sense before. And I know what that feels like. So I love when I see that. So initially I was just looking, I actually didn't think I was going to get hired to teach because I felt like I was too green in a sense. But then when I actually walked into teaching institutions and started planning lectures and things like that, I was so excited. I'm always excited. I get, my colleagues make fun of me because I'm always excited. It's a life problem. But it was something that I found was more infectious than I had realized, that if I'm excited about a topic, then I have that's something that I can give to people. And I think I just always will be a teacher. I think that's something I always will be.
Okay. So, it's great to talk with people who love what they do. It's kind of, like you said, it's infectious. So, how do you go about finding costume projects and marketing your skills?
There's no one answer there. I don't think there's ever going to be. Um, Finding companies that you can become attached to that are funding a full production or a full gallery show or whatever it is that you're interested in is one way to do it. You obviously then also become beholden to the rules and regulations of that company. You might become a regular employee. It's a good way to go though if you want someone else to kind of be regularly helping you subsist as opposed to completely freelancing, which is much more inconsistent. Um, I use a lot of things. Do not underestimate Instagram, especially for the kind of the current generation of hiring people. Do not underestimate having a website of your own and an Instagram. Don't underestimate Facebook, actually, weirdly enough. There are a lot of professional networking groups that will see your work and will respond to you. Alignable, LinkedIn, all of those things. Um, but I follow a bunch of job posting websites. They send me emails when there's anything in my area. Doesn't mean I can always take it. If I don't want it, I forward it to a friend. If a friend sees something in their networks, they'll forward it to me. So I guess it does kind of come back to that networking thing in the end. Always. But again, if that person didn't actually like me, they're not going to take the time to send me that listing that might be perfect for me. So it's really, if I have something I don't have the time for, I'm going to send it right to my first friend I think it sounds good for.
Right, right, definitely. Um, what was the biggest adjustment that you had to make transitioning from undergrad to your time at the University of Texas at Austin?
Scale would be a big one for me. Earlham's what, 2,500 or something like that, I think.
I I think it's a little bit less than that now.
University of Austin, Texas is huge. 400 theater majors, undergraduate theater majors, much less the grad students, much less the other schools in the college and the colleges in the university. Just a big place full of people. I went from being in classes that had maybe 15 students to classes where I was teaching a class that had 1,000. That was a huge transition. That was sometimes smooth and sometimes more rocky. Let's just say. And also the competitive nature. UT Austin is a Research One institution, which means that sort of the academic and research legacy that we're contributing as a school to the world is very highly valued. Relationships with donors are very highly valued in a different way than the way that Earlham exists. So I never felt that competition was the driving force of my experience at Earlham, but it absolutely is a driving force at UT Austin, because your product is so important and your process is a little bit less so. And so I had to adjust how I was interacting with that because I am more of an Earlham person existing in a UT Austin space. And so just kind of making those mental adjustments to stay myself, but also interact with that place on its own terms.
So we're at 33 minutes now. I make sure I am respecting the time that we carve out for students to ask questions. I see that we have some participants with us now. So if you have any questions for Lirit, please raise your hand, type them in the chat, and have at it. If not, I'll continue asking questions because this is fun.
And questions about anything, absolutely anything.
Okay, Chima wants to know, how do you think your experience at Earlham contributes to your ability to work in a collaborative space that design often is?
In every way. I mean, really seriously, Earlham, the way I think about it now, Earlham teaches you how to think, to think, the action of thinking, if that makes sense, not what to think, but how to approach things in a critical way, how to think of every perspective, how to approach things as a thinking person. And that, weirdly enough, it's possible that I don't think I knew that when I was a student, but as I go into other places, people have been sort of taught a certain pedagogy or way of thinking that then may limit them in other ways. Whereas I feel at Earlham, the education is very much learning to strengthen the fact that you can think and you can explore and you can create your own conclusions from those thought processes. I bring that to everything, no exaggeration, everything. Um, and as a collaborator, you need that. You need to be able to come to every sort of meeting or collaboration with a generous spirit, be open to things that are way outside your wheelhouse sometimes. And I think that Earlham prepares you for that uniquely well. Absolutely.
Right, right. In case you joined us a little late, just to recap, Lirit is a costume designer. She's an educator and a freelance artist. So if you have any questions about those industries, definitely feel free to have at it in the chat. So while students are thinking, how has COVID changed the landscape of what you were doing as a costume designer?
It has. It has and it hasn't. Everything, live performance is not dead, but it's on pause in a lot of ways, as it should be. And that means that, you know, the other things that I've done, such as small indie films or photography styling, which I love to do, are those skills are coming lots more in handy because we're thinking about more controlled images as opposed to a full stage picture. So conceptually, it's changed things. I was talking earlier about how costume designers get all up in performers' business, like that's part of our job to get all up in people's space. Um, less feasible, right? So there's a lot of I've talked people through some of their own fitting things so that there was no need to be too close to each other. And then I've had garments shipped to me that I then was able to. We would Zoom, and I would walk them through fitting things on themselves, and then it would be sent to me. I would do the alterations and send it back, for example. But in a lot of ways, it's the same. You know, we're still telling stories. We're still thinking about bodies.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you still work in freelance right now?
Yes, especially right now. Actually, I'm not teaching. I'm doing some remote classes, but I'm not teaching full time at a university because I have asthma and a lot of other lung things that make me a prime target for COVID right now. So I decided that an in-person experience is not what I'm not the wise choice. I'm actually sort of launching, I would say, in a way, a more official freelance business right now. So it's mostly leather work. We're doing a lot with different cosplay communities, which doesn't sound that professional, but actually it's really, really fun. We're doing a lot of armor work and a lot of photography and advertising.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that's picking up too.
Me too.
Tell us about Comic-Con.
um, you know, I never got to see the event. I wish that I had. So they're doing oh gosh, if I even remember its name, they were doing this big augmented reality like live-in thing for a full weekend. So it was like 48 hours or something that you could experience this whole thing. I never got to do it, but what I ended up doing was costuming kind of all of the non-player characters, all of the hired people who were part of this, who would guide you through the experience. And we were basically making big, like black trench coat slash kind of evil doctor coat things, and we made like 25 of them. It was a lot of fun.
Sounds like fun. I'll find it. We have another question.
Yeah.
In terms of freelance artistry, what have you done and or seen as for artists monetizing their art, marketing their work?
That is a big question. I think it's hard. It's the hardest thing. Um, and honestly, if you have a friend who's good at marketing you, if you have that one friend that talks you up all the time, take advantage of them. Have them help you with your marketing. I suck at marketing. My partner thinks I'm magical, which is great because I don't think that, right? But they do. And so I have this voice in my head that's always like, oh, you're so much cooler than that thing that you said about yourself. And I'm like, well, thank goodness, because I didn't know that. Always keep in mind when you're creating artisan pieces, and you should be charging artisan prices. A lot of us don't believe in capitalism in the brand that it is right now, but we live here, right? You always
have to survive.
Yeah, we have to work in the system that we exist in, even while we may be trying to change it in the ways that we can. And that means that artists have a right to survive, right? Um, Always look at what other people are doing and charging, because you don't want to. I work in certain sculptural elements, I work very, very quickly. If I make a silicone mask, for example, and the going price of that kind of mask is whatever, let's say $400, whatever. Um, I'm not going to charge a dramatically discounted rate because I can do it slightly faster than a lot of other artisans, just because that's a knack that I have, because that's not fair to the artistic community that I'm part of, right? I'm not going to just undercut prices of other people. I could maybe a little, if I wanted to, but I'm not going to do something like that that's going to change what other people are perceived as charging too much then, right? So you want to think about the community that you're part of. When you see other people posting their work, you want to repost it and you want to say, this is so worth the amount of money that it is, or you want to always be invested in other people's stuff also being worth what they're saying it is, because that's what's going to support you, not you saying it about yourself. Because we want everyone to believe that we're worth the time that we put into something. Yeah, so it's a lot of it's networking. I'm sorry, it's networking, but it's supporting other artists in your area is absolutely a big part of it, and deciding what you're actually worth. You have the right to be worth whatever you believe you are, but then you got to stick with it and be consistent about it.
So what I'm also getting from this conversation is networking with a capital N is relationship building and supporting your peers. It's not just selling yourself,
Yeah.
but being organic and intentional about the relationships that you build and supporting those around you. So we have go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, just taking the time. I mean, I when I see it pay off, it's always remarkable to me. I just started Alignable, which I guess is a business marketing platform. Who knew? I got an invitation the other day. I made one, and then I started having recommendations flow in, which is part of how it works. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so nice. But then I'm realizing these are all the people that I've worked with, and then I actively went back and made sure that I was sending recommendations back and forth, because you want to cultivate that. You're nourishing it like a plant. You're not just letting it, letting people do something for you without giving back. But you have to also, I don't know, I'm a very independent person. Let people do things for you. Let people be nice to you. That's hard, but it's important.
There's also the option to do that on LinkedIn as well. Just
Yeah.
is out there. You can send recommendations and your friends can write recommendations for you on your LinkedIn, your professors as well. So Nate had a question and it is, he wishes we could do this every day. Thank you. What are your thoughts in the new trend of costume peer-to-peer rentals? Do you make products just for them?
For rental?
Do you do peer-to-peer rentals, or do you make products specifically for a specific customer? And
I
Nate,
do.
if I'm getting that right, please let me know.
If I think I lost audio for a second there, but I think I got you. I do both. I do have a lot of stock of my own, and a lot of people, I can imagine the world 10, 20 years from now when I have so much stock that I'm just working in rentals, which is fine. I would love to do that. Actually, that sounds great. Um, I do especially a lot of jewelry rentals and photography styling rentals, where I would give pieces for a short amount of time, but I still have them in my stock and I can still share them with someone else. And I love to do that because that means that someone gets access to something for a lot cheaper than if they had to buy the whole thing. I also do a lot of for example, if somebody wants a particular, I do a lot of prosthetics and masks. If somebody wants a particular thing, sculpting that thing and creating the mold of that thing takes a lot of time. If I add that thing, once I have that mold, if that becomes part of my commercial things that I can sell to anyone, once I have that initial sort of thing that I can reproduce, then it's sort of like I'm not going to charge the original person for all of that creation work when I can now share that and use that with other clients who might want that. So it's finding balances like that, if that makes sense. Whether it's renting or making something, now you have the pattern or the whatever that lets you make it again. How can you work with the clients and what they have, I guess. Did that help?
Yeah, I think. Nate, does that help? I hope so. So it sounds like a student interested, I don't imagine that you probably got too many opportunities to do all of the creative classes that were at your disposal at Earlham because of your major. But do you think that it's a good idea if someone did want to go into costume design, not just looking at clothing and theater, but also looking at the resource they have in jewelry making and metals and like that?
Absolutely. I did get to take medals at Earlham, and that was the light of my life for an entire semester. Drawing. If you want to do costume or any type of design, you should take drawing classes. You just should be able to draw as well as you can get to at whatever point you're at. There's no shame in not being good at it yet, but you want to keep learning. Um, Digital rendering, Photoshop, Adobe Suite, things like that. Absolutely. I'm trying to think what else was really useful. I did take medals and drawing with Mark. I think I can't remember if I took weaving or not. I know I wanted to. Like fiber things are important. Things like weaving and texture and textile art. So yeah, there's a lot of things, but even things you don't think are associated could be at some point, right?
Nate said, yes, we were.
Yay.
Any more questions right now? Because I can keep going.
Put on my teacher glasses.
Snap.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Did I get all of the questions that I had? Okay, we got through that. We got through that. We've gotten through all the questions, all those. Um, so business courses. Let's talk about courses as someone who's going to go into freelance work and working for themselves. Um, I know you said marketing, but what other business skills do you think? Because we have a great business department at Earlham as well that students should definitely take advantage of while they're there. So what other skills do you think those people wanting to market their own products, what do you think they should look into?
I wish I had taken advantage of the Earlham business program, and it didn't occur to me at the time. But I did get a certificate from UT Austin, which was really helpful. It was just like, I think it was 3 courses, and it was super useful. Um, Reading freelance contracts,
Okay.
understanding your own tax bracket as a freelancer, or are you an employee, or are you an independent contractor, and all those types of things. But you'll pick that up as you do it. Being able to look at a contract and tell if it actually has your best interests in mind and is actually asking something that you can deliver, that's one of the most important things. And understanding as a freelancer that you always have the right to negotiate. If you see something, if it has dates in it that you didn't actually discuss with the client, I always send clients my own contracts if they don't have one already. But you always have the right to make edits and send it back if you want to, and to negotiate for it. A lot of them might not have, a clear start or end date, little things like that that are eventually possibly going to, you won't have a line of defense if that company, for whatever reason, even if it's just kind of, negligence or they didn't think about it, you don't have a line of defense to say, yes, you do have to do this thing or give me this thing. So you want to make sure that contracts are very clear. If you can find classes on that, absolutely take them, because you will be working with contracts forever. Forever.
And even if you can't find, even if the students out there or whoever is watching this part of the Earlham community that can't find classes such as those, as a student at Earlham, you also have LinkedIn as a resource, and LinkedIn right now has a learning platform where you can get certificates as well that get posted to your LinkedIn profile. And they've got a wide variety from playing guitar to graphic design.
Yeah.
So definitely check things out like that. Check those things, check those resources out. You can find that. If you can't find it on your own, you can find it in the heart online. Yeah, I definitely think that advocating for yourself is it's pretty hard for Earlhamites.
It is. It's
Advocate for themselves.
yeah, we're real good at advocating for everybody else, right? That's part of the Earlham personality, but not always for ourselves.
Yeah. Right. But when you're a freelancer, you gotta do it for yourself too. So we're going to come to a close. Are there any more questions out there?
I am super happy to be contacted by anyone who's going into an art-related field. Portfolio development and mentoring is what I do. So if I can be useful, y'all are going to be my colleagues and my peers in the future. So come at me, please.
Right. This is great. This is great. It was so nice to chat with you, Lirit. And thanks for coming, Nate and Chima. And I hope this is useful for those who will watch this later on. So I wish I could give you a round of applause.
I would just get awkward and have to leave. So don't.
Okay. So like I said in the beginning, feel free to go follow our Facebook and Instagram pages, because we will have more spilling the tea episodes, if you will, from more alums in different industries. So once again, thank you, Lirit.
Thank you so much for having me.
Best of luck with your textbook. I'm sure it will be awesome. I'm sure you're going to get it.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed over here too.
Thank you. And thank you so much for coming, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.